You know what I love? I love traveling. I'm more of an urban jungle kind of guy. I love walking around the city and appreciating the cityscapes and all the tall buildings and the amazing urban scenery. But do you know what I love more than traveling? Netflix. I love lazing around and watching movies all day. But what do these things have in common? What does this have to do with this? And this? And this? To this? So what is the golden ratio? First, we'll have to talk about a man called Fibonacci. Born in 1170, the Republic of Pisa, Fibonacci, also known as Leonardo Bonacci, was an Italian mathematician considered to be the most talented Western mathematician in the Middle Ages. When studying the breeding habits of rabbits, he noted that after each monthly generation, the number of pair of rabbits increased from 1 to 2 to 3 to 5 to 8 to 13, and identified how the sequence progressed by adding the previous two terms. The number of the sequence has also been found to be ubiquitous in nature. Among other things, many species of flowering plants have number of petals in the Fibonacci sequence. The spiral arrangement of pineapples occurs in 5s and 8s. Those of pine cones in 8s and 13s, and the seeds of sunflower heads in 21s, 34s, and 55s, or even in higher terms in the sequence. So what does this have to do with the golden ratio? The golden ratio, or more commonly denoted as the Greek symbol phi, is equivalent to the number 1.618033988875, or approximately 1.618. In the 1750s, Robert Simpson noted that the ratio or quotient of each term in the Fibonacci sequence to its previous term approaches, with even greater accuracy in the higher terms, a ratio approximately equal to 1.6180339887. You're probably more familiar with the visual representation of the golden ratio or Fibonacci sequence. If you're not familiar with what this is, this rectangle is the visual representation of the Fibonacci sequence, where each square, which makes up the rectangle, has a unit measurement of its corresponding number in the Fibonacci sequence. The line that you see drawn through the corners of the squares is called the Fibonacci spiral, or the golden spiral. Now that we've talked about the Fibonacci sequence and the golden ratio, we can get back to how we started this video, by talking about my love for Netflix and cities. So let's get back to it. Have you ever seen that grid on your phone while taking pictures? You know, the one that looks like this? If you've known anyone who's done a quick Google search about how to take pictures, you'd know that the grid can actually play a good role in making your photos more Instagram worthy. This grid is what's called a phi grid, and you may have guessed it from its name, but this grid is based off and derived from the golden ratio and the Fibonacci sequence. The grid's purpose is to help you line up your pictures to coincide with the golden spiral. In photography and cinematography, using the grid as a guide is called the rule of thirds, which simply means you want the subject of the photo or video to lie somewhere along the intersection of the lines. This is done to achieve a greater level of aesthetic for your photos and films. There have been many theories as to why this is, but most of the theories can agree that the Fibonacci sequence is nature's most prominent sequence or pattern, and something deep within us can truly resonate with it. This idea of using the Fibonacci sequence and golden ratio to make your work more aesthetically pleasing can be applied in other fields such as art and architecture. In architecture, some of the most prominent buildings in the world, even buildings created thousands of years ago, still have a resemblance to the golden ratio in highlighting the building's aesthetic features, as well as the current feats of architecture and engineering pay tribute to the golden ratio to allow their creations to stand out beautifully. Photography is a kind of art, and thus other forms of art such as classical art can have the same properties. The Fibonacci sequence and golden ratio can elevate a piece by allowing the viewer to be locked in on the subject of the work. Some of the greatest pieces of art in the world were made by Leonardo da Vinci, a man who was famous for using the golden ratio in his work and studies. To summarize, the Fibonacci sequence and the golden ratio are things that are truly inescapable. From the food we eat, the plants that give us oxygen, to the faces we see every day, to the homes we live in, to the media we consume, and the memories we preserve with our photos. Knowing about the golden ratio might not seem too relevant for the average person, but it's meaningful to understand and appreciate the uncertainty and yet beautiful predictability of our mysterious world. Thanks for watching, and I hope you learned something today.